This is the Team Objection podcast for April 11th, 2019, episode 386. And look, I found another cast member.
Hooray!
It's
Me.
It's
It's
Dave.
this guy. It's this guy right here.
You can
He's
hear him. You don't need to see him. You can tell.
stunningly far away from the camera, apparently.
Yeah, you're just too chill.
Yeah, just laid back, man.
Very tranquilo.
Tranquilo? Is that Spanish?
Tranquilo.
You know I don't speak Spanish.
That's true. We did it in high school, and now no one remembers anything anymore.
No, no lo acuerdo.
No, por supuesto.
I don't know what that means. Of course.
Of course, of course.
Of course, of course.
So, with Dave and I here, we had some different ideas. We could have talked about basketball. We're recording on Monday night because I'm about to leave town on a business trip. Dave just got back from a business trip. You know, this is adult life, apparently, so that's super fun.
We could have talked about business trips, but
could've
we've already
talked
done
about-
that in previous episodes.
Could have, yeah, and I haven't gone on mine yet, so I'd be like, I'm looking forward to seeing the sights, even though I've already been to Chicago now. But I'm going to see some different things, and I'm probably going to spend my last day there in the hotel not doing anything.
I don't blame you at all, because that's what I wanted to do in New York when I was there, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I love traveling, and I like seeing the sights when I do, but every time, if I have a day off or so that's in there somewhere, I'm always better off. I hate nonstop when I travel. I hate it.
Yeah, I'm starting to not resent business travel, but it's not as fun as I thought it would be.
Yeah, I think there's a happy medium. It's different for every person, but for me, like if I'm traveling more than once a month, that's too much for me.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Some people want to go like every other week or even more, and if that's your bag, then sure, I respect that. For me, I like traveling, and especially for fun, not so much for work. As it is, nah.
That's the difference. That's the difference.
Yeah. And even if you can maybe extend your stay a day or two to try and get some extra time in the venue to spend those days doing what you want instead of work, then it's your own expense still, and you still only have a limited time, and you've coming off time that you just were working. It's just,
Nope.
eh.
Yeah. So we're kicking it back to the old school, is what I'll say about this episode.
Very old
That's what we
school.
decided to do.
Very old school. We have had discussions about bringing back this particular segment off and on for some time. And I think there will be occasions in the future when we do this, even with a more full cast. Maybe not the same form as before, certainly no intro stinger, and even then we're not going to have any formal reads or anything. But just like in the old days, we thought there's an awful lot of news happening. There's plenty of things that we can talk about. There are no fewer idiots in the news than there were a few years ago when we ran headlines regularly. So we're bringing it back in an impromptu way. It's going to basically be the episode. It is the segment of the episode. We tackled 3 stories that are kind of weird, like the old days, and we're going to talk about them.
Can I sing it? Fixing the intro?
If you want.
Do. That's not it.
You were mostly on the right track.
Do. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
That's the important part.
It's from Valkyria Chronicles, a game Dave never played, so the fact that he remembers it is pretty good.
I've listened to a lot of our old episodes.
That's true. I have not. Except I have listened to all of them in the process of editing them.
Yeah,
So
but there's a few that I've gone back to and listened to like repeatedly because they're good episodes.
yeah, there's a couple I've wanted to go back to recently, especially the 100 ones, knowing that that's coming up rapido.
Yes.
We are on 386, of course, as mentioned in the intro, so 400 is just around the river bend.
14 weeks away.
And we did some pretty interesting stuff for 200 and 300 and 100, I suppose. But anyways, headlines. Molly's dead. She's not here to read them. Not literally dead, but metaphorically and figuratively dead.
I think she dropped off listening even, so.
I think so.
So yeah, she did this.
We occasionally text.
That is probably more than I do, unfortunately. It is rare when I speak to my sister, which is kind of sad.
I mean, she chose to go to Texas, okay? We're still
She
here.
did.
We're here.
did. Yep.
Okay, you hear that, Molly? No, you don't, because you're in Texas and you're not listening.
That is a problem with trying to hear this.
It's probably not the best approach to put our best long-term fans on blast, but here we are.
If they're not here,
Yeah, I mean, we throw our regular co-hosts under the bus when they're not on, so I don't see why fans should be any different.
yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle, you son of a bitch. So I'm going to tackle these in order. I'll give a little brief summary of them because, you know, I'm like an editor now.
Like an editor-in-chief. You're a chief.
Yeah, man. Managing editor, man. Man. First up, we have a singer from the Dominican Republic who was singing for 106 straight hours in an attempt to break the Guinness World Record of 105 consecutive hours. Unfortunately, he failed to do so, even though he made it through the entire session, because he took breaks of longer than 30 seconds. The whole thing was being streamed and or recorded, and when they went and checked the video, there were times where he took breaks of 2 minutes or more. And so I'm kind of sad about this because, A, my throat hurts just thinking about it.
Mhm.
As somebody who's done radio for a long time and who should probably get his tonsils removed, occasionally I get a sore throat from talking too much. That's on like hours, like 5, 6 hours sometimes during a day. If I'm at work or I'm really busy, I'll be talking. 106 hours of singing, which I find to be more taxing than speaking. I don't understand what happened here, and I don't understand why he didn't know the rules well enough to not fail the whole thing if he was going to take the time to do this in the first place.
So I'm bothered by a couple things. One, why in the world did someone not stop him? Like, wouldn't you figure there'd be like, normally when they set these Guinness World Records, there isn't a representative from the Guinness Book of World Records there to observe this feat happening. I guess maybe they were recording it, so no one was there to actually see it in person. But if someone was there saying like, hey, the rule is 30 seconds, and they see them going longer than 30 seconds, nobody stopped him,
No.
which is depressing because he just kept going and blew out his vocal cords probably.
He tried really hard, even though he was probably failing in somewhere in like the 10 to 20 hour range when he took one of those breaks that disqualified him. Saved himself, 3 days if anybody had told him. No.
And I'm second really confused. It's like, what did he sing? Like, how many different songs did he have on this set list? How many repeats were there? How easy were these songs to sing? I don't think he's singing like My Heart Will Go On or I Will Always Love You or some belting song. So I'm curious to know what his set list was.
You're asking the right questions because if you're going to be doing that, you really can't start doing things that are difficult. You can't try and go after like Don't Stop Believing, knowing that you're going to hit those high notes and then you're going to be tearing yourself up for later. I found another article that had a little bit more as far as details, but doesn't say anything as far as songs. So unfortunately, I'm not sure we're going to have that information. That's disappointing to me. I'm also just curious. I sort of alluded to this in the intro to it, but like, if you were going to take on something of this magnitude, why do you not understand the rules? Why? Why?
And it's not like, oh, hey, there was one instance which he took a break for 35 seconds. Because that's like, oh, well, it happens. You were singing for 105 hours straight. But it was 2 minutes. Like, he knew, right?
Yeah. And
somebody could have told him.
My other problem, he's already tried this once. He tried and failed 2 or 3 years ago. So he should have known even more so what the rules were and what he was chasing. Maybe last time it didn't go well enough, so he was like, this time I'm bound and determined to do it. And he still walked in and failed one of the challenge's rules.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm looking here. It says he had more than 5,000 songs ready to go, which is just...
Let's see. 106 hours is 6,360 minutes. Every song's about 3-4 minutes, on average. Obviously, there's outliers like In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. But, I guess the math sort of checks out. You want to be able to also change on the fly. You can't be locked into a set list, get 90 hours in, loathe the idea of singing another Queen song, and be stuck with it.
Yeah.
You are under pressure, yes.
No, that was Ice Ice Baby. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, he had 5,000 songs. I think I know of 5,000 songs, maybe? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I could name 5,000 if I really sat down and thought about it, but the fact of actually like knowing the words to all 5,000 songs is pretty impressive.
And the melodies.
I figured like you gotta have some sort of rule in there where you can't just be like da 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 da. Like, yeah, you gotta actually know the words.
Because then you're not even trying, so of course it's easier to sing.
Mm-hmm.
The harder part is when you enunciate and when you project.
So, still, and this guy who had the 105 hours, what? Huh? I can't stay awake for 24 hours, much less 105.
Yeah, and the more you would be pseudo-performing and or actually performing, the more tired you get. It's not like you're just sitting around where you can maybe make the case that you could make it last longer. Because there have been people who've done longer sessions and other stuff like poker, for example. Somebody did about 100 hours straight at one point. And at a certain point, that one's even more baffling to me in a way because although the physical toll is less, the fact that you could lose thousands of dollars seems like a outlier to me when you're tired and not playing your best. This one also had some additional dangers because apparently his agent, which, first of all, what? Is they were monitoring his oxygen levels in his brain, and about the 60-hour mark, his oxygen levels dropped to 92, with critical levels being around 84 or 85. So they were planning on like dropping the whole contest if it dropped below 90. And I'm like, so he was singing for so long and so hard that he was depriving his brain of oxygen.
Yeah, throw in the towel at that point. Just, you know what? You already took a break longer. Just throw in the towel, throw it in.
Yeah. So they're going to let him die on stage for a challenge he can't even possibly beat if he makes it to the end.
Sounds great.
Well, you know, you hire an agent to watch out for you, and this one is apparently shitty at his job.
He failed horribly.
Shitty at his job. I told you these stories were weird. They're going to get no less weird with our second one. And I don't know. This one to me I kind of like, but, you know, we'll save our judgments for when we get into it. Basically, there was a man in Hawaii who was going to have to serve 4 years of probation because of being convicted for car theft. And probation can mean all sorts of different things. Sometimes community service is tied into it. Sometimes it just means being prohibited from going to certain places or doing certain activities. In this particular case, this Hawaii man was told he is not allowed to drink Pepsi for 4 years because it was the man's favorite soft drink, and I guess the judge either has a sense of humor or no sense of humor and no chill whatsoever.
Well, in the story, when he got arrested for stealing the car, the police came came to catch him because they caught him trying to steal the car. And when the police asked him where he was going, he said he was going to buy some soft drinks, namely Pepsi, which is what he wanted because he said it was his favorite drink.
Mm-hmm.
So the judge is like, well, let's see. He said he was going to get Pepsi, so no Pepsi for you.
And I can't help but wonder, I can't decide which is worse, honestly, whether that's true or if he was just lying. I don't know which is worse, because if he's telling the truth, that means he stole a car just to go to a grocery store or a Circle K to get Pepsi. And if it's not true, then what was he doing stealing a car, and why did he think soft drink was going to be an adequate fallback?
I think he was in one of these, like, he stole the car, was driving to, you know, whatever place he was going to drop it off after he stole it, and then got pulled over by the cops and just panicked. And he's like, well, I'm going to get some soda because that's what normal people do that are not criminals that steal cars. Normal people get soda. Yeah, soda. I'm getting soda.
Sure, yeah.
That's how it went.
It's one way of looking at it. Sure, it could be possible. Could be possible that he's an idiot. But what I want you to do, and I also want the listeners/viewers to do, is rank these three punishments in order of best to worst. 4 years of probation for not drinking Pepsi, so you're not supposed to have it for 4 years. 100 hours of community service, or a $100 fine.
Well, I think he got all of them. But...
He did. So I'm just deciding, like, which of these is the worst? Because for me, I look at that $100 fine and I'm like, $100? Who fucking cares?
Well, I mean, 21. When I was 21, to have $100, I had it, I guess. But it wasn't like the easiest. Like, it could hurt you a little bit.
Like, I know we're at a point in our lives where financially $100 doesn't mean nearly as much as it used to. I understand that to some extent, but even then, like, I'd rather pay $500 than do 100 hours community service involuntarily.
Yeah. Yeah, 100 hours community service is, I mean, I guess that's pretty standard and probably better. I wonder what the motivation behind the judge's rulings are here. Does it really work to deter?
I mean, that's kind of the question, right? Like, is this type of punitive measure something that is more effective than the standard stuff? Because the community service and the fines are all, you know, well trodden by now. So maybe this judge has had success imposing kind of weird penalties like this in the past. I don't know.
I'm going to quote the guy who who stole the car here. Quote, "I'm not going to steal cars anymore," he told the judge. "I don't want to be in jail no more."
Yeah. He had 7 days in jail as part of this, too. That was before the sentencing, but...
So he's like, well, I've had 7 days without Pepsi because I'm in jail. So I might as well keep not having Pepsi and not be in jail.
His attorney was like, yeah, in those 7 days, he learned about the importance of the law. It's like, yeah, 7 days, huh? He's a reformed man now, 7 days. And maybe it was. I'm not saying it's impossible. Sometimes you get scared straight, and it just takes one time, especially if you're Catholic, to have the guilt hammered into you forever. I'm just not convinced that's the case here.
I mean, it depends on the type of kid that we're dealing with here, because, like, I would say, like, let's say I did something stupid at 21 that would have got me arrested. the mere idea of being in jail for more than a night, I'd be like, no, whatever. I'm not. Whatever. Tell me what I have to do to get out of here. Just don't let me be in here anymore. I'm done. Like I'd be terrified.
That's sort of the problem, right? Because anything over a night means you messed up. You could get tossed in for a night for like something drunken, but not devastating, not like a DUI. But you get rounded up when you're too rowdy in a public place or something. One night, while not a great look, is still, you come back from that. Stealing cars is one of those things that's just going to kind of be on your record for a while, and I don't know if not drinking Pepsi is going to be the one thing that makes that happen for me. I might just be like, oh, I got arrested for stealing a car. Maybe don't do that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, unless he had someplace to take that car and had like a chop shop I was going to and was going to get paid for it, like stealing the car is really stupid to do. You're not going to get away with it. You're not going to have any value of it. So,
and maybe it was fine overall. Maybe it was just a joyride. Maybe there wasn't anything sinister behind it. The weird part to me is that this is his cousin's car. So that means to me, at some point or another, they checked with the cousin. And I guess they must not get along because the cousin could have been like, oh, yeah, that's my cousin. He was going to get soft drinks. It's okay. And maybe even if it wasn't okay, if he was willing to forgive him, he might be like, yeah, don't do it again, you son of a bitch. But you keep him out of the limelight. Nope. The cousin was like, yep, arrest him. Get him out of here. Pepsi? No, he's not allowed to have Pepsi. Throw him in jail.
Family over nothing, apparently.
I guess so.
Yeah.
That's a bad look.
Yeah. Well, don't steal cars. Like I don't know. That seems really easy, and the crime is just not going to pay no matter what you get out of it. So
obviously, this was the part of the segment we've been missing. The audience knows truly that Dave's approaches to these stories are what really got us through the segment, and that was another prime example right there. Don't steal cars.
Lessons. I deliver life lessons like don't steal cars. It won't pay off.
You're out here taking the big stances.
Hot takes. That's all I got.
All right, so our final story is a bit of a weird one to me that I don't know that either Dave nor I understand, but apparently this is a thing in some parts of the country. Specifically, this one was St. Louis, if I'm not mistaken. And this is a thing that kind of went viral about a week and a half ago, where there was a photo on Twitter of somebody bringing in bagels to work. Sounds boring enough on the surface. Sounds good.
Bagels are good.
Everybody likes free office food. First of all, let's just talk about that for a minute. I'm the one providing it most of the time now, but even then, something about like just having a thing at every week meeting to be like, all right, we're going to have pizza this week. We're going to have this. Everybody bring in food. We've done potluck stuff sometimes. That's one of the few things about work I ever look forward to.
What's funny is this is going to sound like first world problems because it is. But there are so frequently people in our office that bring in food because they're trying to sell the investment products to all the financial advisors that there's too often food in my office. And now I've gained weight because of it and I don't like it anymore. So please stop bringing food in.
There is that aspect of it. Most of the stuff that's brought into work is not healthy.
Not in the least.
Though to be fair, the things that are easiest to bring in bulk are not healthy.
Bread, donuts, fast food, sandwiches.
Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Sweets. So it's understandable. Now that said, I'm of two minds about this. The thing that we're talking about here is this photo that went viral of somebody with sliced bagels. They had a whole box of them, I think multiple boxes of them, on a table at the office. And you can see that these bagels are cut into what appears to be something like 8 to 10 pieces a piece. And that's not, that's in addition to it being sliced in half. We're not talking that kind of cut. That would be a stupid discussion. In addition to the sliced in half, they're then cut into segments across. And, okay, on the surface, I'm like, that looks stupid and I don't like it. But it's kind of makes sense. I don't know how many people work in this office.
The more I look at this, the more sense it makes. Like,
it's better for sharing.
It's absolutely, like, so often. How often do you go in, anytime, especially in an office, you see donuts that are cut in half or a quarter taken out of it, or, a bagel that the top half is taken and the bottom half is left there, or it's cut in half. Like, so often people are like, well, I can't have the whole thing, but I want a little bit, so I'll just take half of it. In this case, you have literally like bite-sized pieces of bread. You dip in your cream cheese, take a bite, and you're done, and you have like 2 bites of it. It's perfect.
I think it makes a lot of sense because this is the same reason that pizza, for example, is popular, because you can get that large pizza cut into like 10 slices and all of a sudden you have 10 pieces to give to people. Whereas if you wanted to get something like hamburgers, well, you kind of have to get at least one for everybody then,
Unless it's sliders, but still, I guess, that's just a mess.
Or you take a hamburger and you slice it into 8 to 10 pieces. which
Gross.
then makes you
That's
some kind of serial killer, I think.
yeah, kidding. You gonna
Now,
slice up somebody else after you cut up those hamburgers?
I suppose. Now, apparently this is a regional thing. I suppose if you wanted to take this example outside the office, then I might be concerned if anybody's cutting their bagels that way and eating them on their own, especially if you're going to eat what amounts to an entire bagel. Like, that just
Yeah.
makes you a sociopath if you're doing that.
Hmm.
But maybe that's just because we're two guys who work in office environments. But to me, I look at this and I go, it makes sense.
Yeah, it really does. So I'm looking at like all the comments, and this is of course what the culture we live in today is. It's like every single person in the world has to comment on it, which is fine. That's what we're doing. We're commenting as well.
Sure.
But they all have this negative, like, oh, well, were you fired immediately after bringing these in? Officer, I'd like to report a crime. Like, this makes sense. Just because it's different than the way you did it doesn't mean it's wrong.
This is sort of the blackest of the black holes of outrage culture. Now,
Hmm.
there are more serious examples that I'm also not very keen on, and I don't want to belittle those by talking about one like this that's relatively harmless, no matter how much people overreacted. But still, like you said, it's also because social media has opened this window where everybody has a platform to speak, even though no one actually cares. They can give themselves the impression that someone does, and hey, if other people agree with said bad take on a comment, then they can also chime in. Look at all the favorites some of these bad takes have. Isn't that fun for people?
Hmm. And I mean, I guess that's always, of course, been the problem with Twitter is the fact that you can sit here and say, man, I think something's really stupid for slicing the bagels like this. And people have the platform to A, say it, and B, agree with it. And then, different websites will pick up these tweets because it's public domain, basically, and run it. And that's a news story. But, I mean, stuff like this, getting outraged over bagels, it's like, I don't know. I always feel like we're supposed to have this tolerant culture, and I feel like we get intolerant about the stupidest of things.
And I'm not really trying to make this political, but all I'll say is I'll point this in both directions. There have been times when Democrats have been way too fixated on really dumb, little, meaningless shit that Trump has done, and the same was true of Fox News and other really far right-wing Republicans during Obama's administration. We can think of several examples on both sides, and that goes all the way back to like Obama's tan suit. Why are we spending time talking about this? Who cares? Even if it is a faux pas, let alone the fact that they actually look decent in it. And the same is true of a lot of things that Trump has done. Why did Kofifi become a thing? Why?
Because he spelled it wrong, Chris. He's clearly a moron who doesn't know how to type the word coffee.
And you know what? Part of the blame for that, admittedly, needs to go back to Trump, who instead of just being like, yeah, that was a typo, or, I just hit the wrong buttons and hit sent at 2 in the morning, haha, let's all have a laugh. He was like, no, I didn't type that. I meant to type that. All of this kind of spirals out of control because of all the players involved, not just the original perpetrators. I'm just saying, to me, bagels, donuts, anything like this where you have, especially when you have different varieties. If this was all one type of bagel and you did this, maybe that's less interesting to me. But here you can have multiple kinds this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can have the cheese bagel, the cinnamon bagel. You can have the regular bagel. You can dip them in different cream cheeses if there's a whole spread of them out there. I see a lot of advantages to this.
One of the things I like doing at the office is bringing in the donut holes from Dunkin' Donuts, because you can get like 5, 6 different kinds in there, and they're a much smaller, easily approachable size. Where somebody may not want a whole donut, they're watching their weight, they're diabetic, they're whatever. But one little piece of one, well, they can have one little piece. And again, there's also the feeding the masses thing, which to me, again, outside of work, maybe this is weird. In the work environment, I have zero problems with this whatsoever.
I will say I do appreciate when people kind of take this type of stuff over the top, like when it gets the meme treatment. And there's one picture on this article particularly I liked where he said, I made some St. Louis style cereal for breakfast this morning, and it's an empty bowl on top of cereal, which is on top of a spilled milk. Which I'm like, okay, that's pretty funny. I appreciate your sarcasm. Like, taking it to that level of extreme is what's funny.
I'm torn because I do like that one. I do think it's funny, and I'm also like, that's not even what this was at all.
No, but that's why it's funny. It's so far out there.
Like, what are you doing? But that's true because that was a later one. That's a later entry as opposed to the knee-jerk responses where somebody kind of thought it out. So I'm willing to admit I like it overall. There's just a part of me that's like, you're not helping. Because you're taking this to the extreme, and now other people are going to follow suit too.
But sometimes I love when it goes so far off the extreme that it forgets what the original content was about.
Somebody else has a good point down there too, which is more surface area for toppings.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I don't put a ton on my bagels, butter or peanut butter most of the time. You can put all sorts of stuff on there: cream cheese, jam, jelly, etc. Nutella if you're into that shit.
Mhm.
There's just a viable reason for this, and if you want to make fun of St. Louis for that being some kind of like regional specialty slash take on a classic, then fine. I mean, Lord knows we give like New York and Chicago shit for pizza and some other examples, but maybe let's calm down a little.
That was one person's thing where it's like, well, if you didn't order those in New York or New Jersey, they're not bagels.
Yeah.
So apparently, I've had a real bagel once in my life because I've been to one New York bagel shop.
I mean, there are definitely some differences between expertly made bagels and regular ones. Don't get me wrong.
I don't notice them.
The gap is not wide enough to really be worth mentioning. It's
Uh-huh.
not. There are plenty of dishes that you can get there where the high end is so much worth it over the run of the mill one where, that's fine. Even some pizzas are like that because when you think of the easy to get pizzas like the Domino's and the Pizza Huts of the world, and you think about like a good local pizzeria, that gap is huge. Bagels are just bagels. It's dough that's deep fried to a
Yeah.
certain extent.
Boiled and deep fried.
Yeah, that's it.
I
I
don't
don't
see
know.
anything wrong. I do appreciate one comment that's said down here as I scroll through of someone's comment of, I'm brave enough to admit I'd fuck with spread sliced bagels.
That is a thing that I have liked. This is a turn of phrase that I don't remember. Michelle and I might have talked about this on an episode a while back, but
Probably.
I caught on to this a couple months ago, and I like the idea that fucking with something is now good. It used to be
Yeah,
you
exactly.
didn't want to be fucked with. Now the turn of phrase is, yeah, I fuck with that.
Yeah, I'd fuck around with that. Yeah, of course.
Bagels, yeah, I fuck with that. Because the first time I saw it, it was definitely something that could have been taken sexually. I didn't know the meaning of that phrase in this particular context yet, so I was like, "Wait, what?" Turns out it's fine. It means it's positive. It's good.
And then, of course, at the end of this whole thing, Panera has to get in there, and all the corporate people are the latest people, and they fuck with it in a bad way, I'd say.
Yeah, there are bad ways to fuck with bagels, especially if you're a guy, and that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Not what I meant.
No, but it was Marge. Admit it.
Yeah, exactly.
They couldn't help it. You know how these restaurant / company social media accounts are, where they want to go viral just by lashing out and making some kind of quip.
Mm-hmm.
The fast food wars have been going on for a few years now, and I think Wendy's is probably the champion right now, but Arby's is way up there. I like quite a few of Arby's.
Mm-hmm.
Although Nihilist Arby's is my favorite.
I have not seen that one, and I'm going to look it up right now.
Yeah, pull that one up. It's basically a Twitter account where everything is meaningless and existence is futile, but all of them then talk about Arby's at the very end. You can find an example or two. You pull them up. You're already looking.
Exactly. They're trying to sell T-shirts. It's their pin tweet of nothing says who gives a shit like shameless merchandising, so fuck it. Shirts right here. Pins right here.
Yeah.
So they're selling things while also enjoying the fact of they understand that they're selling out.
All these end with like enjoy Arby's or eat Arby's. So
yeah. In honor of President's Day, just bring your kids to any Arby's and we'll put them in a cage, no questions asked. Enjoy Arby's.
Mm-hmm. This New Year's Eve reminder, even if you don't have really regrettable sex or die snorting that one last line of speed tonight, there are no new beginnings. You can't change. And even if you could, it would make no difference at all. Please continue enjoying Arby's in 2019.
This is one that's going to get old really fast, but I appreciate it.
That's just it. A lot of Twitter things are one note, and as long as that one note is good, they'll get some mileage out of them, even if you've run through the gamut of the jokes for them. This is one where more often than not, I'm amused.
Yeah. I think, Chris, you had the best saying about this once, was don't yuck with other people's yums. So, they slice their bagels this way. Does it affect you in any way? Stop getting mad about it. That's all I can take from it.
Yeah, are you a coworker of this person and were offended by sliced bagels? First of all, you're still overreacting, but at least you have a personal stake.
3 goddamn bagels right there.
I know. If somebody wants to bring them in, they've been cut like a checkerboard, or they've been like broken apart into chunks or anything. It's still free, and you should probably not look a gift horse in the mouth.
I would appreciate checkerboard cut bagels, like little tiny pieces of bagel you could just like dip in cream cheese and eat it, like little pocket-sized ones. They're great.
Could be good.
Sounds fantastic.
So I guess I don't get the uproar, but guess what? If we went back through this show's history and tracked all the headlines that we did, especially in the olden days, that would probably be true about, I don't know, half the time for ones we used to do.
I'm very curious to see how our minds have changed over the years on some of these old headlines that we that we ran and talked about because I could see it absolutely happening. We're like, man, what I said 5 years ago was really stupid. What was I thinking?
Yeah, I mean, if we ever start to run out of material, and I don't see that being the case all that much, to be honest, we're already 386 episodes deep. But if we did, the thing that we could then do is just go back and bring back old retread segments, and like you said, take a look at them now. What's changed? What's changed in us, and what's changed in the world?
Exactly.
Sounds derivative. Sounds like I don't know. Sounds like what the Simpsons have become.
You mean where they're running stories in season 30 about some one-off character they had in season 6?
Kind of, yeah, yeah. I don't know if we could. I don't think we have enough audience goodwill to start reusing our own material. At least not purposefully. Lord knows, I'm sure we've repeated some things on this at some point or another. There have to be times in this podcast where we've told the same story twice with 200 episodes in between. But that's just who we are. Okay, so shut up.
But then again, do we have enough audience that knows if we rerun it back?
That's true. I don't have a whole lot as far as those breakdowns go. I mean, I know about how much every episode gets in terms of downloads. I know we had 2 that were 4 figures in the last 2 months, so that's pretty cool. Considering we have done 0 promotion for 2.5 years.
Hey.
But I don't know if that's the same person listening 1,000 times or if it's 1,000 different ones, and I don't know how far back they go.
I hope if it's one person listening 1,000 times, they reach out to us. Just let us know.
There are still a handful of people who listen every week.
It's good to know.
And some that listen regularly, but not maybe every week, depending on the topic of the podcast, which is also fair. If they're not into the Suns, I don't expect them to listen to a 40-minute Suns cast.
Yep.
If they don't like Kingdom Hearts, I don't expect them to watch a 3-part Kingdom Hearts review. That's fair.
Well, it's good to know you weren't screaming into the void then.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes my opinions matter, at least enough that somebody listens to them. Maybe they don't process them. Maybe they don't agree with them one bit, but they exist in someone else's mind besides my own.
Mm-hmm. Hooray.
Any last remarks? You haven't been on the show for a bit.
Life is too nuts when you have a coworker that goes on a paternity leave for 4 months, and you're the only one in your office for a few days, and then you go on a business trip and still are expected to keep up on all the work while out of town. It's very difficult.
I have really found no way whatsoever to deal with the conundrum of everybody keeps tightening the workforce because you want to make, basically more out of less. And that makes sense from a business perspective. And yet you get down to the point where people are so spread thin and so hyper specialized that anybody misses time and you can't cover for them.
It's actually what I like about my company is generally they don't do that. They're really good about having adequate coverage. But we unfortunately went from 3 people to 1 person, or actually 4 people down to 1 person for a couple days here. And that was just an unfortunate turn of events.
Yeah,
we'll have 2 people go for the foreseeable future till my coworker gets back from leave. But that's July when that's going to happen. So it'll be a bit.
Because even for some of the corporations that have done a good job about making that happen, there are always those higher-ups that want to look at the situation and go, well, you guys did get by okay with just 2 people for 3 months. You survived, so maybe we should reevaluate one of those positions.
No, thank you. Please run away and stop being a corporate leader because you'll get fired eventually with your golden parachute.
Probably, and not that I want to put my own work on blast. I'm trying desperately not to do that on this podcast because, I am in somewhat of a position of import. But I will say this much. Corporate has this philosophy where people are supposed to stay home when they're sick, and I just find it to be hilarious because it never happens.
Yeah. And it's difficult to do. Like it's really difficult to do when there's deadlines to meet and people to please. And the other thing that I hate the most about that, because I've thought about that fact of like, maybe I do need to stay home from work because I'm sick. But I'm like, well, the work's still going to be there right when I get back too.
Yeah.
So
that's the other difficult part. In addition to having to juggle, how many positions there are to cover for certain people when they're gone, especially when there's more than one, you also have this issue when you get into higher level positions, as both of us have now discovered, where when you take time off, all it means is all that work is waiting for you when you get back. So it almost feels like you didn't have any time off at all.
Yeah, because being out of town last week, I was out of town Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Monday and Friday, I was there essentially from about 7 a.m. to 6-ish p.m. each night, and I pulled another one of those today. And, a lot of people don't think that 11 hours is that horrible a day, but kind of is sometimes.
Especially when it's cumulative. One day, because something weird came up or someone was just sick for a day, like that's fine. I have no problem extending for that kind of stuff for a day or 2. When it's going to be a period of days or weeks or, God forbid, months, all of a sudden you're talking something very different.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. We'll get through.
Yes.
Life will be fine, some one way or another.
I mean, there was no episode 2 weeks ago because I was in Colorado. I was supposed to be off for 7 of those 10 days and working remotely for the other ones. I worked 3 more of them. And then I still had a pile of emails and other work to do when I got back. So not only did it cut into my time off, there was still the mountain waiting for it afterwards. So it was like, man, in some respects, it would have been simpler never to have left.
Which is so depressing.
And that's how you end up working yourself to death.
Yep.
Yay.
Don't do that. Don't do that, Chris.
Alrighty. Well, that is the end of the Dave and Me episode, which we haven't had a pairing like this for a bit. And before the most recent time, I think it was a really long time in between those type of episodes. So it was nice.
Yeah, it was. We had got to bring back old stuff and had topics to talk about. And Sean wasn't here to scream over the top of us with his inane ramblings.
I do not look forward to the first headline segment we do with him back because I expect, at least for the first one, he's going to fall into his old trappings of like being way over the top and taking the other side of it.
Come on, he's matured now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm convinced.
Do I sound convinced? I'm hoping to sound convinced.
I'm convinced. I'm completely convinced. You sold it.
Okay, good. 100%. Great.
Yeah.
That is the end of this episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com. On social media, we are Team Objection. That's at Team Objection on Twitter. And Facebook.com/Team Objection. You can find us at youtube.com/Objection Network for Let's Plays and this podcast and a D&D show. And finally, you can send emails to the show to objectionnetwork@gmail.com. See you next time.